Okay, let's get into this. April 19th, 2025, that's going to be 30 years, 3 decades since the Oklahoma City bombing. Just a terrible national tragedy, really left a scar.
It absolutely did. And, within that huge story, there's this other one, much closer, much more, well, disturbing that we really need to explore today.
Yeah, we're doing a deep dive into the death of Kenneth Trentadue. It happened not long after the bombing, and his story, it really raises some serious questions about the official story we all heard.
That's right. And as we look at the details, you'll start to see why it casts doubt, on what we thought we knew about that horrible day.
For this deep dive, we're pulling from some pretty interesting sources. We have parts referencing a 2007 Mother Jones piece, In Search of John Doe No. 2, really dug up some stuff, and also the website, KennethTrentadue.com.
And we need to be really clear about that website.
Yes, a very strong warning here for you. That site has graphic photos and descriptions related to Kenneth Trentadue's death. It's
Yeah.
tough to see. So our goal today, our mission, is to try and understand what happened surrounding his death and if this potential link to the bombing actually holds water.
Okay, so the story really kicks off Juneteenth, 1995. That's when Kenneth Trentadue gets arrested down at the Mexican border.
Right, he was coming back into San Diego,
Yeah.
driving, what was it, an '86 Chevy pickup.
Yeah, an older truck. And the reason for the stop, a suspended driver's license.
Okay, simple enough. But then it got more complicated.
It did, because they also found he had parole violations from an old conviction back in California. One of the conditions was no drinking beer.
No beer.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about Trentadue himself? What did he look like?
Well, the descriptions paint a picture. Dark-haired guy, about 5'8", pretty muscular. He is a former athlete doing construction work then. And this is key. Remember this. He had a dragon tattoo on his left forearm.
A dragon tattoo. Got it. So he's picked up in June. What happens then?
He's held in San Diego for a bit, like a couple months. Then, and this is where it gets kind of strange, he gets transferred all the way to Oklahoma City. That was August 18th, 1995.
Oklahoma City. Why?
Supposedly for a parole violation hearing for that California conviction.
Wait, they transferred him cross-country for a hearing about not drinking beer?
Yeah.
That seems unusual.
It does seem unusual. I mean, interstate transfers happen, but usually for, much more serious parole issues, a cross-country trip for a no alcohol rule violation, it stands out.
And crucially, that transfer lands him in the same federal facility in Oklahoma City that was holding Timothy McVeigh.
Exactly. The most famous or infamous federal prisoner in the country at that moment. John Doe No. 1.
Okay, let's just rewind for a second. The bombing itself, April 19th, 1995. A horrific day.
Truly awful. McVeigh was caught pretty quickly, identified as John Doe No. 1, but right after the bombing, there was this frantic search for someone else. They called him John Doe No. 2.
Based on witnesses, right?
Right.
People who saw someone with McVeigh.
Yes, initial reports mentioned someone seen with McVeigh before the bombing, maybe even walking away from the Ryder truck just before it blew. The FBI then put together its own description based on those accounts.
And the description law enforcement circulated for John Doe No. 2.
Mm.
This is where it gets really uncanny, isn't it?
It's genuinely disturbing. The description was something like around 5'9", muscular build, dark hair.
Similar to Trentadue,
Very similar. And some early reports even mentioned he might be driving an older pickup truck.
like Trentadue's '86 Chevy.
Exactly. And then the FBI profile included a detail about a possible dragon tattoo on his left forearm.
Wow, okay. So the physical description, the truck, the tattoo, it's an incredibly close match to Kenneth Trentadue, who is now, coincidentally or not, in federal custody in Oklahoma City.
It's a disturbing overlap, yeah. And this is where Kenneth's brother, Jesse Trentadue, enters the picture. He's an attorney based in Salt Lake City, a former law professor.
And initially, he had no idea about any potential connection, right?
Yeah.
His brother was arrested on parole violations, seemingly unrelated to this massive national event.
Absolutely no reason to connect the dots at first. But those similarities, that description, it eventually led Jesse down this path. The source material describes it as a 12-year investigation.
And one where he apparently faced massive government stonewalling. That suggests incredible resistance.
It really does. His persistence is quite remarkable, actually. And what's really significant is that through his investigation, Jesse apparently found documents suggesting that even while the official story was focusing only on McVeigh and Terry Nichols,
Yeah.
parts of the Justice Department were actually looking into a wider plot. They suspected more people might be involved.
So if they were potentially looking for others, and they had someone in custody who matched the description of John Doe No. 2 so closely,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't alarm bells go off?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It raises fundamental questions about what was really going on inside that investigation.
Okay, so let's get to the core of it. Kenneth Trentadue dies in federal custody in Oklahoma City. What was the official story?
The official cause of death was ruled as suicide by hanging.
Suicide by hanging. End of story.
Not according to Jesse Trentadue, not even close. What he found when he saw his brother's body was, well, it paints a completely different and horrifying picture.
What did he find?
He described finding Kenneth's body covered in bruises head to toe. His skull was fractured in 3 places. His throat was cut.
Cut, but the official cause was hanging.
Right. And Jesse also reported evidence of severe beatings on the soles of his feet, a known torture technique. That website, KennethTrentadue.com, and again, please, the warning about the graphic images stands, it seems, to provide visual evidence supporting these claims.
It's just the level of violence described as staggering.
Yeah.
And it completely contradicts suicide by hanging.
Completely. The key thing here is that stark clash. Official ruling versus the physical evidence of extreme trauma.
And the weirdness didn't stop with the body, did it?
Right.
There were issues with evidence.
Oh, yeah. Our sources point to things like blood-stained clothing just vanishing, security cameras that supposedly malfunctioned right around the time of his death.
Convenient.
Very. And logbooks that were either missing entirely or had crucial pages torn out.
So potential evidence just gone.
Yeah.
And what about the scene itself? His cell?
Well, the handling of the scene raises even more red flags. The medical examiner wasn't allowed access to the cell for months, apparently.
Months. Why?
Good question. And when the ME was finally allowed in, the cell had already been thoroughly cleaned and even repainted.
Cleaned and repainted before the medical examiner could see it.
That's what's reported. It just screams cover-up, or at the very least, a deeply flawed investigation into his death. What were they trying to hide?
Okay, this is already deeply suspicious. But then there's this whole other layer, the theory of mistaken identity.
Right. This came apparently from an anonymous source who contacted Jesse Trentadue. The source suggested the FBI might have killed Kenneth because they thought he was someone else.
Which sounds completely wild. Jesse must have thought so too.
He did initially, understandably, dismissed it. But then things started to line up in a really unsettling way.
How so?
It involves another figure, Richard Lee Guthrie. He was a suspected member of a white supremacist militia group, thought to be involved in bank robberies, maybe to fund anti-government stuff.
Okay.
And the connection.
Guthrie also ended up in federal custody. And he died there just before he was supposed to be interviewed by the LA Times. His death also ruled as suicide.
Another convenient suicide.
And Timothy McVeigh himself reportedly told people he believed Kenneth Trentadue had been killed because interrogators mistook him for this guy, Guthrie.
McVeigh thought that. Wow.
Then, when Jesse Trentadue eventually saw a photo of Richard Lee Guthrie, he was apparently shocked by the resemblance to his brother, Kenneth.
They looked alike.
Apparently so. And get this, Guthrie also reportedly had a dragon tattoo on his left forearm.
No way. The same tattoo.
The same distinctive tattoo. It's almost unbelievable, isn't it?
That's pushing coincidence to its absolute limit. And then a reporter, J.D. Cash, who was looking into the bombing, apparently confirmed that the FBI's own description of John Doe No. 2, the build, the complexion, the older Chevy pickup, those tattoos.
Let me guess, it matched Kenneth Trentadue perfectly.
Matched him with remarkable precision. According to Jesse Trentadue, when he learned that, he said, everything fell into place. The mistaken identity theory suddenly seemed terrifyingly plausible.
So you have this man, Kenneth Trentadue, who looks remarkably like the description of a potential bombing conspirator, John Doe No. 2. He also looks remarkably like another potential suspect, Richard Guthrie, right down to the tattoo. Both Trentadue and Guthrie die in federal custody shortly after the bombing. Both ruled suicides under suspicious circumstances.
That's the chilling sequence of events. And Jesse Trentadue has obviously kept fighting, pointing out what our sources call these gaping holes in the official story of the bombing itself.
And it wasn't just Trentadue and Guthrie, was it? The source mentioned another death.
Yes, another man named Alan Gillis Baker, also with supposed FBI connections, also died in custody later, also ruled a suicide. It forms a pattern that's, well, difficult to just dismiss.
A pattern of suspicious suicides involving individuals potentially linked, in one way or another, to the fringes of the OKC investigation.
And it fuels the suggestion, as the source material indicates, of a cover-up potentially reaching very high levels of federal authority. Even if they were all suicides, the sheer number and the extreme oddities surrounding them are deeply troubling.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we're really left hanging with this huge, unsettling question, aren't we?
Absolutely. Was Kenneth Trentadue's death just some incredibly bizarre, tragic coincidence?
Or was he killed? A victim of a catastrophic case of mistaken identity by federal agents who thought he was Richard Guthrie, or maybe even John Doe No. 2 himself. An error tied directly and disturbingly to the Oklahoma City bombing investigation.
It's a question that still echoes, demanding answers even now, and we really encourage you, if you want to understand more, to check out the resources we mentioned.
Yes, that website, KennethTrentadue.com, but again, please be prepared for the graphic content. It is disturbing. And also the 2007 Mother Jones article, In Search of John Doe No. 2. We go into far more detail than we can here.
They really lay out the complexities and the evidence Jesse Trentadue uncovered.
And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Just consider the implications. If a man, matching the description of someone potentially involved in one of the worst acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history, dies in federal custody under clouds of suspicion just months after the event, what does that make you ask about the search for truth? About transparency, about accountability when things go tragically wrong, especially in the aftermath of something that shook the entire nation? What questions does that raise for you?